These are your algebra notes for section 2.8. I'm going to ask that you listen carefully, write everything down in your notes, just as if I were teaching. But the advantage is you can pause the recording if you need more time to write something down. You can rewind if you want to see something again. Look it over maybe more than once. It'll always be here on my website. So go ahead and get started. Get out your notes. Get a pen or a pencil to write with, and follow along. All right, first I'll give you time to write this down a little bit, but if you need more time, pause it. We are talking about writing equations in function form. You've heard about functions. We've talked about functions. We're going to do more with functions, and this time in equation form. An equation in x and y is written in function form when the dependent variable, y, we've talked about that, is isolated on one side of the equation. The dependent variable, y, has to be isolated, completely alone, on one side of the equation. We've worked with x and y, and we've worked with functions. Now we're going to put equations in function form. For example, this one, the y is on one side of the equation, x is on the other. It's almost in function form, except for that 3. This 3 right here means that y isn't completely isolated. It has this 3 tacking along. Well, we know how to undo multiplication. I call it undo multiplication. Get rid of it. It's technically the inverse. The inverse of multiplication is division. So you would divide by 3 because that 3 will cancel out there. Now you have the y completely isolated on one side of the equation, function form. However, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side, and there are 2 different terms there. So you have to divide by 3, not only once, but twice, and then a third time. All 3 terms have to be divided by 3. The first one gets canceled. Drop down your equal sign. 6x divided by 3 is 2x, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. That is in function form. Done. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to find x. You don't have to find y. No substituting. All we're asking for is that it gets put in function form. Notice I didn't combine the 2x and the 4 because they're not like terms. A 2x and a 4 are not alike. No combining. Here's another example. Write this down. 2y equals 7x plus 10. Same process, same idea, just different numbers, so you get the hang of it. I'm going to do division in the other format. Instead of using the divide sign, I'm going to divide by 2 this time with a fraction bar. Either way, your choice. But if I divide by 2 here, then I must also divide by 2 here. And I've got to divide by 2 again a third time. 3 terms, 3 divisions. The first one cancels, you have a y. Drop down your equal sign, your y is isolated. Function form. 7 divided by 2. 7 doesn't divide by 2 as a whole number. Reduce it if you can, but you can't. So you have 7 over 2x. Plus 10 divided by 2, which is 5. Notice I did not use a decimal here. I prefer improper fractions because some decimals are not exact. If you have a fraction and it reduces, reduce it. If not, leave it. Done. Final answer. It takes 1 step, dividing by 2 3 times. That is your equation in function form. Let's try another one. This time I'm dividing by a negative 4. As you can see there, you have negative 4 equals 2x plus 8. It looks like it might be in the glare a little bit there. Negative 4 equals 2x plus 8. I'm going to now divide by a negative 4. It's still division. Don't confuse that with a subtraction sign. It's a negative. Negative 4 times y, the inverse of multiplication is division. I'm going to divide by 4 and isolate my y. But I'm also going to divide this by negative 4 and this divided by negative 4. Be careful. 2 divided by 4 is not 2. 2 is smaller than 4 is. You have to reduce that fraction. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. 2/4 becomes 1/2. y equals negative 1/2 x. Keep the x there. And now you have an 8 divided by a negative 4. 8 divided by negative 4 is a negative 2. Notice I turned my negative into a subtraction sign. I would not let you, or I don't prefer, and I won't let you leave it that way. You can't drop down the plus sign and say 8 divided by negative 4 is negative 2. Mathematically, you're not allowed to have two operations in a row like that. So instead of plus a negative, you're going to make this subtract 2. A little bit more complicated step because of the negative, but it's still just trying to isolate the y and get it completely by itself. Next problem. Little different. There is no coefficient in front of the y. Nothing attached, no number multiplied by the y. But you have the x on the wrong side. That x can't be over there by the y. It has to be on the other side of the equal sign. So what are we going to do to get it on the other side of the equal sign? Since it's a positive x, let's subtract x. Positive x and a minus x, they're inverses. They cancel each other out. We once again completed our function of getting y by itself. It's isolated. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other. Now ask yourself, can I take x things away from 10? Can I take 10 subtract x? If I have 10 apples, can I minus an orange from that? They are not alike. They're not the same in whatsoever, so you have to keep them separated. And to keep everybody's answers the same and consistent, and the way that we will do it in future problems, is the x value is always going to come first. The whole number or the number will be in the back. So because that was a subtract x, you're going to write negative x, and then a positive 10 becomes plus 10 at the end. Everybody's answer will be the same if you put the x's before the numbers. And once again, you have a full function. Equation is in function form if the y, the dependent variable, is isolated on one side of the equation. You don't have to rewrite this, write the equation in function form because that's what we're doing. But this does say pause the video and try these on your own. Start with this first problem, 7x plus y equals 12. Write it down. Pause. And now hopefully you solved this. Double check to see if you did it right. The first step is to minus 7x from both sides. That will cancel your 7x. Subtract 7x over on this side. Your y is now isolated. You have an equal sign. And because, once again, these are not like terms, you'll write your x first, negative 7x, and then your plus 12. If that's not how you did it and that's not what you got for an answer, you're going to have to fix it. Erase what you did or start over. Take a look at this the way it is done the right way. Y equals negative 7x plus 12 is your final answer. The next problem is 3y minus 9x equals 21. This is going to take 2 steps. So you're going to do it with me. We'll practice together because not only do you have an x on the wrong side, but you also have a coefficient. The 3 is not where it belongs. So first step, just like in solving any equations, is to add 9x over to the other side. Adding a 9x underneath the 9x will cancel it out. Over here you have a 21 and a 9x, which are not like terms. We'll put the 9x first, the 21 last. Over here, however, you still have a 3y. The y has not been isolated. It's not alone. Go back to the very first problem we did. When you have something multiplied by 3, you need to divide by 3. Dividing by 3 is an inverse operation and will cancel. 3 divided by 3. 9x divided by 3 is 3x. 21 divided by 3 is 7. Final answer, y equals 3x plus 7. 2 steps. First add the x over to the other side, then divide. Same rules as if you were solving an equation. Any adding and subtracting comes first, Multiplication, division happens second. Why don't you attempt this one? Write it down, 6x minus y equals 8. Try it. Pause the camera or pause the video and see if you came up with the right answer. Challenge yourself. Go for it. Ready? Pause. Okay, you're back. First step you should have done, because that's a positive 6x, you should subtract 6x from both sides. Be careful when you subtract and you cross off your 6x, you don't lose track of that negative in front of your y. This negative in front of your y is very important. We have to keep track of our negatives. When you subtracted 6x over here, again with the same order, a negative 6x comes first. The plus 8 becomes last. Shortcut. We've talked about shortcuts in solving when you have the opposite of y and you want an actual y. The shortcut is to change all of the signs all the way across. Your negative y becomes a positive y. Your negative 6x becomes a positive 6x. Your positive 8 becomes a negative 8. Final answer. Shortcut, just change the signs. I can make this a plus, that a plus, and that a minus. Final answer, in function form, y equals 6x minus 8. We have a couple of what-if problems. What if your x's and your y's and your numbers are all on the same side? It equals 0. You have a negative 3y plus 2x plus 12 equal to 0. You know that your y is going to be isolated because that's the dependent variable. It has to stay. You have to move everything else to the other side. Or do you? What's better, to move two things to the other side or to move one thing to the other side? If I add 3y, the rule on functions is that you have to get the dependent variable by itself. It did not say that you had to have the dependent variable on the left side of the equation. It can be on the right side of the equation. This saves you some time. Now you have 2x plus 12 equals 3y. With one step, you were able to almost isolate that y. Now do what you've done before. Go ahead and divide by 3. This time I'll use the division sign instead of the fraction bar. But you must divide by 3 different times. Your choice on where you want to put the y. You can put it in the front or you can put it in the back. I'm going to move it back over to the front of the equation. Y equals 2 divided by 3 is 2/3. That would be one of those decimals that I don't prefer. 0.666666666. We don't write it like that. 2/3 and 12 divided by 3 is 4. Y equals 2/3 x plus 4. And you completed function form. Variable that's dependent is by itself. The x's come first. The number comes last. Last one of these. Negative 10 plus x equals 2y. Your y is nearly isolated, but again it has a 2 by it. And this one looks like the one that we just did previous, where we moved the y over to the right side of the equation. That's okay. Move it to the right side. This one's going to have a little bit something different. When you divide by 2 3 times, a negative 10 divided by 2 is 5. But you might ask yourself, what's x cut in half? What's x divided by 2? I can't divide an x by 2 if I don't know what the x is. Remember, there's that little invisible 1 hiding in front of that x. Use that 1 now. That invisible 1 in front of the x gives you a fraction to work with. 1/2. 1/2 is the fraction, and the x goes with it. X over 2, take anything divided by 2, it's the same as cutting it in half. If I give you a pizza and I say, divide this by 2, you're going to cut it right down the middle. If I give you a pizza and say, cut it in half, you're still going to divide it right in the middle. Those are equivalent. Dividing by 2 and multiplying by half, same thing. This is more proper in function form. You want that fraction in front of the x. What does that equal? Our 2's canceled over here, and it equals y. Again, function form, the y is isolated. Doesn't have to be on the left side of the equation. I'm going to leave it on the right side of the equation this time. And that's your practice with getting equations in function forms. Notice we have no answers in any of them. None of these did we go back and say y equals 10 or x equals 7 or y equals 2/3. We don't have an answer. We're just rearranging to get it in fraction form, in function form. Is there a purpose to that? Yeah, but that comes in another lesson. There's no way I want to put that on top of you as well of just doing this. You will need this form in a future section, and you will see the relevance of it, but let's not get into that here. Let's just practice getting the y by itself, putting the x before the before the number. If I did rewrite this, and you prefer to put it in the other order, you would, of course, put your x first. 1/2 x plus 5. All right, you are going to have an assignment on this. So when you are finished and you've listened to all the notes and you wrote them down in your notebook, you will bring your notebook up to the teacher, show me that you have all of your work done, all of the notes taken, showed examples of each problem. Then you will get a worksheet, and you'll have more time in class to work on this worksheet, 2.8. But not until we see that those notes are complete. So please make sure they are. All right, I'm signing off.